Again, that's quite good for the home owner, meeting the mortgage payments, etc. But it is relatively bad from an inflation point of view. It means maybe, although we've seen inflation come down from 7.2% to 6.7%, the speed with which it goes down further from here in the next 12 months, could be a bit slower than what the Reserve Bank would like. Hello again, and welcome to another comment from NZHL or myself with regard to what's happening in the housing market, interest rates, etc. Not necessarily too much new information over the past 7 days or so, apart from maybe the data for the labour market in New Zealand, basically showing that things are still exceedingly tight from an employer's point of view. The unemployment rate has stayed very low at 3.4%. We had jobs growth in the March quarter of 0.8%, 0.5% in the December quarter, so employment numbers up about 2.4% from a year ago. Basically, the data show that there are still plenty of jobs out there. And I emphasize that because what you'll tend to see in the media here on the radio is stories of layoffs being done by some larger firms out there. A lot of them are simply catching up on restructuring, which they didn't do during the pandemic. In the technology sector, it's a story of overexpansion during the pandemic, and now more of a reality starting to set back in there. But there are pluses and minuses, I guess, from the strong state of the labour market in New Zealand. Now, on the plus side, what it means is that for the people with about $170 billion worth of mortgage debt, who for the next 12 months will have that rolling from 3.5% fixed rate into something higher, let's say 6.5, 7% or so, a lot of opportunities will exist to supplement one's income to meet the higher mortgage payments by either working more wherever you are, or maybe taking on a part-time job, doing a few hours at the local cafe, maybe taking in a boarder as well, because the accommodation is starting to tighten up out there with tourism sector growing, so apartments, etc., houses going back to Airbnb, foreign students are studying in New Zealand. It's quite different from previous times in New Zealand with interest rates being high, when the labour market would usually be very weak. And it would be weak because businesses, they'd look ahead to where they see things going, they'd have a bad outlook for the economy, for their own business, and they would lay off staff in order to improve their cash flows with a full expectation that if they were wrong, or when the economy picks up again, they could get those staff back, if not the same people, but certainly others skilled, motivated, willing to accept employment. I don't think there are many employers this time around who would feel any confidence that if they lay people off, they're going to be able to replace them in 6, 9, 12, 18 months' time. And that means that businesses are hoarding labour. They're not doing the layoffs that would normally be the case. Now, like I say, that's positive from a household budgeting point of view to help offset the higher mortgage payments are there, but it does mean more and more of a profitability crunch in the business sector. The small, medium-sized enterprises maybe in particular, their cash flows are going to be crunched, and so to the extent maybe you deal with real estate agents, maybe you deal with that sort of client base, I think their penchant for buying houses in the next wee while is going to be pretty limited because their profitability is going to be heavily constrained out there. The problem for the Reserve Bank with the still very tight labour market is it says wages growth is probably still going to remain relatively strong this year and into 2024. Again, that's quite good for the home owner, meeting the mortgage payments, etc. But it is relatively bad from an inflation point of view. It means maybe, although we've seen inflation come down from 7.2% to 6.7%, the speed with which it goes down further from here in the next 12 months, could be a bit slower than what the Reserve Bank would like. So what that adds up to is that while we have some extra support for the housing market, and maybe this starts to contribute towards a turning in the cycle at some stage, I think maybe in winter, it does mean you should not be expecting that interest rates are going to fall rapidly this time around. As I've said before, don't be expecting a repeat of what happened in 2008-09 when interest rates fell very sharply as the economy shrank 3% in the deep recession back then. This time around, I still think think it's a 50-50 call as to whether we actually go into recession or not. The economy's getting a big boom from booming migration numbers and tourism, migration, relatively low Kiwi dollar, etc. But just be a bit cautious in your expectation for how rapidly interest rates will fall over the next couple of years. I think they will fall, but just curb your enthusiasm thinking that there's going to be a rapid 2 or 3% decline in the interest rates. Maybe it's more in the tune of a year from now, maybe the rates are down, let's say 1% at best, quite frankly, and then the year after that, maybe it's another percent. And largely there, I'm talking about the likes of the 1-year fixed mortgage rate. So good that the labour market is strong, but it has those interest rate implications. All the best out there.